Geocachomaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome back to the GeoGearHeads, episode 377. Wow, we're getting up there. And this is actually going to be on lab caches and adventure labs. Boy, I'm having problems already talking. I apologize. I'm Daryl W4, and back as usual is Chris of the Northwest.
Hello, Daryl. It's so good to be back. Can you believe 377? You know, that's a lot of X's and V's and I's in Roman numerals.
Well, and I can't stop thinking that we're only 23 weeks away from hitting 400.
400. That's a big milestone.
It is. And I'm just going, how the heck did we get this many shows?
Well, we started at 1 and we were careful till we got to 377.
I don't know about the careful part.
Okay. Well, we got here.
And the worst part is we have shows that don't even get counted in that because they're the patron shows, the bonus shows, the interweek shows. We did a couple of news shows. So I think our total is well over 400 actual episodes. But yikes, that's just a lot.
And one day we're going to get it right.
No.
Oh.
We're just going to give up one day. We're not going to ever get it right.
1 week we're just gone. If you go to tune in and there's no GeoGearHeads, we gave up. No, we won't. I won't let you.
Oh man. No, we did not. Wet Coaster wants to know if we started the numbering over again when we ended the beta days. No, we did not. We did keep the numbers. Yeah, we did keep the numbers going. And if you go into like iTunes, the episode numbers are showing just 0, or it's just showing 1, 2, 3, 4 for those. We did not do the funky numbering, the beta numbering, to make sure that the podcatchers didn't have issues.
Mm-hmm.
But we are going to be talking about the lab caches and adventure labs, a show that's kind of long overdue and kind of not so much, because adventure labs are new and still a developing story. But we've brought in a couple of our past guests who do have experiences with both to help us figure out more of what each of these are. So, Chris, do you want to bring our guests in?
I would love to. First of all, not that there's one over the other, but we have to choose one first, and that happens to be Merlin 1392. Merlin, let me say you're looking good for your age, because most people put their birth year in their username if their number's in there. So
I do, Chris, and thank you for that. And Merlin from King Arthur was one of my right-hand men all along the way, so it's been really good to keep it going.
Thank you. Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from the I guess the studios in downtown Rockford, Michigan. Yeah, so it is a little bit warmer here today than it has been, but I'm in Michigan, and I'm part of the Michigan Geocaching Organization. So, and these are my humble studios.
Well done.
Thank you.
Done. Now, we also have with us Bounce. How are you doing this evening, Mr. Bounce?
Doing great. Nice to be back on the show.
Yeah. Now, I know you're joining us from Washington State.
Yes.
Well, I think you are, because that looks like your normal studio.
Yeah.
Even with a hand scanner behind you there.
Yeah.
And we had the pleasure of being the highest temperature in the continental United States yesterday. Washington State was warmer than California or Florida. So there you go. Just tossing that out there. Not too bad for the last day of winter. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We want to talk about lab caches. We're going to start with labs, and then we'll move on to the adventure labs. But the I guess I have to call them now the old-fashioned lab caches, right?
I don't know that I'd call them the old-fashioned lab caches, but
well, the adventure labs are kind of lab caches as well, and those
they're more an expansion, I thought, on
they're newfangled
caches. Yeah, so we'll start off with the lab caches though, because they've been around for several years now, And originally when it came out, it was touted as this way that they could test ideas at geocaching.com rather than just launching and creating havoc like they did with the challenges.
Oh, nothing was wrong with challenges. Nothing was right with challenges.
Nothing was wrong with challenges that a strong delete key wouldn't fix.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. So let's start off with Merlin. Have you created any lab caches yourself?
I'm going to, because of the choreography here, I'm going to say no to that, because what you're talking about, when we talk, I prefer the word traditional lab cache.
Oh, there you go.
And the traditional lab cache was only available to those that had mega or larger events. You got them from headquarters in a block of 10, and you could put them up as part of your event. So no, I was not part of that.
Okay. What about you, Bounce?
Correction to that. Do you remember the iHeart geocaching event way back? So premium members got a single lab cache that was only available to one finder that they could create.
Oh.
So technically, Chris and I both have created lab caches.
You're right.
Wow.
And only one person could find it, and it wasn't very good.
Well, if only one person can find it, does it really mean it's there?
Well, it counts, it's on your stats, but this goes back to the experimental part of it.
Okay.
And at that point, I think it was still only a year or so that Megas had them at all. It was only special things, here and there and mega events, but the count was only like 5. So even that has changed over time as it progressed.
Now, I will say that they're not limited to mega events only. If you happen to know a lackey, there were ways to get them at non-mega events.
Well, and a lot of the geo tours would have them as bonus events and that kind of stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anything that Groundspeak deemed as warranted, you could basically get it.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll move over to Bounce. I know you've created a couple of lab caches.
So I've created one of my own series where I actually had to publish it, write it up, and then I've done about 50 for events around the area.
So did you just create the caches themselves, or did you go and do the web page?
I did one web page series, 10 of them, and then because you get them in a block of 10, you don't have to do all 10, but you get up to 10 of them. And then, I've done about 50 that someone else that I provided to events, and then they've written them up.
Okay. And with those, you're allowed one short answer to the lab cache, correct?
Yeah. So, I don't know how short it is. I think ours were actually, I've been to events where they were like peanut butter, jelly, bologna, and pickle sandwiches. So they have to be pretty long words. Mine are typically fairly short. It depends. I know a lot of people before the lab adventure came out, they were trying to make the words a little bit harder so you can't armchair the caches. They'd put random words in. But you can just create one simple word, or it could be numbers.
Yeah, well, the idea was short. It's not like, the first chapter of the Da Vinci Code. Yeah. But it was something that, you're not going to sit there and write everything off of a plaque because, on a phone, you're obviously going to misspell it or, make a typo of some sort and then no, that's not correct and have to do it again. And, when people become angry, they just won't simply log it.
Yeah.
But yes, I think I remember the peanut butter, jelly, and pickle sandwich answer.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to eat it. So now a few premium members have done it, but how did you get the block of 10? Was that just added to your account from GCHQ?
So HQ sends you a link to create a lab cache adventure. It's a separate page that you go to, and they just assign you one adventure, which can have up to 10 lab caches in it.
Okay.
I don't know that we've actually described what the lab cache is for people who haven't found it or even tried to find one. Like the Caching Dead said he's never had the opportunity to do a lab cache. So this is basically the more modern version of a virtual cache as I see it. You have a web page that you'll go to. You can, with the lab caches, download the GPX file as well and then print out the questions that you can then take with you and answer if you're wanting to do it on a GPSR. But it's essentially going to a space, you can use the web browser as your GPSR, which hasn't worked very well, which is part of the reason why they're trying Adventure Lab. Browser-based navigation doesn't work spectacularly.
I keep hoping it's getting better, but no.
Yeah.
Just no.
So it's essentially finding a virtual in a more modern setting that doesn't get into all of the issues that the virtual had. And I think this is what they kind of envisioned as the replacement for virtual caches when it came out. And it was going to be a lot more diverse and a lot more manageable than the virtuals were.
Right. So it is virtual, but it breaks some of the rules of standard caches because number one, it's temporary. They're only good for a week.
Well, it depends. There are some that go longer.
There are some that go longer. Most of them.
I think the minimum is a week.
Okay.
But
I know they've made some like around, are they around HQ? They made some somewhere that are a year long.
Well, they had some for one of the Egyptian artifact exhibits in, I want to say it was Philadelphia. And then they had another similar one down in Texas where they went for a year. One of them was like 6 months. They had some that were tied to a movie in multiple cities that went for like 3 months.
Okay.
So most often you now get them where they are only good for about a week for something like the Mega Giga events.
Right. The other way that they break the rules is there's no distance minimum. So you can have them closer than I suddenly forgot 523 feet.
28.
528 feet. Thank you. Suddenly I blanked out on how far a tenth of a mile is. You would think by now I'd have that tattooed somewhere on my body. But
well, it's just because you've been spending too much time with the monkey that, has been fighting the Imperial system.
Well, and I got other. When you did that, you made Bounce leave. He must have been a rebel.
He got mad. Well, and I was gonna ask guys in terms of, are we talking about the traditional lab cache or the adventure lab cache?
The traditional lab cache.
Yeah, in the traditional sense, you could place them anywhere. And at least from my experience in this area, they've been more game oriented or a location oriented where you play a game. If you achieve success in the game, you get the code word or you just attempt it. And so there was something to do rather than someplace to go.
Yeah, especially you'll find that at the events where they can do that, but you'll also find some of the mega events like Geo Woodstock that we've done many times will actually take you into like the nearby downtown and show you some of the aspects that you might not know about. Chris, you and I last did that, I think, at we kind of did that this year, but this year was kind of different. That was kind of cool because some of those, they had 30 this year at Geo Woodstock. But this year was kind of cool because it did have some of that.
Yeah.
But it didn't have, I don't want to say, it didn't have the same kind of historical aspect as some of it was, but it wasn't the same as like what they had done at Missouri for that one, where you actually got to walk around downtown, see some of these I don't want to call them all memorials, but the monuments,
monuments, statues, plaques, what have you.
Some of the stuff that's, from the Lois and Clark expedition. And that was just a cool way to kind of explore that downtown. So you have that as one. If for a long time at Midwest GeoBash, they would do some of them that were interactive games that you had to do, and some of them that were, walk around and find these hidden around the grounds. So you had a variety.
Yeah, well, and I thought, didn't going caching this year, they put they had an offsite park that they put 10 of them in, and then I thought 10 of them were around the city as well.
Yeah, they've done that. I think this was the first year they did it that way. But Going Caching has done some really good ones where they're basically doing like gadget caches. And that's, you have to go to the lab location and complete a gadget type cache, kind of the boxes that Bounce was talking about a few episodes back.
Right. And I think that's one of the features of the new Adventure Lab, is that they've got more of that built in, so you can do some of that.
Ooh, we have a very, very critical bit of information here, and we might have been approaching this, but Kathleen in the chat says, the Adventure Lab Builder Guide says that the web-based interface we've been using is being retired on March 25th. We'll need to use the new Adventure Lab app after this date.
Well,
yes.
This recording is on the 21st, so that's 4 days away. So basically, the next lab cache you find will have to be used. You'll have to use the Adventure Lab app to go get it.
Yeah, so a very critical bit of information is the lab caches as we knew them are gone.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
No. That's going to make a few people very upset, I think, because if you have to use the app, you can't use your GPSR.
Uh-oh.
I haven't looked. From the app, can you still download the GPX file? I wouldn't think so.
I don't believe so. But
there's got to be some workaround for that.
I don't think there is. You probably can do like a offline download, if anything. But one of the big things that they've been pushing with the Adventure Lab is trying to get the questions and stuff to be location based, because the problem they had with the oh yes, thank you, Kathleen, Kitty Catch. Sorry, and she said there is no downloading of GPX files, and you must have internet service.
Well, I personally see that as a shortcoming, just for international travelers. If we go across the border to Canada, not everybody has
international data,
and suddenly you can't do these. Or if they come down south, or we head overseas to a GeoCoinFest EU. Which, okay, I get it. They want it to be better, and I appreciate that. But there should be some other way to log these.
Yeah, well, the trouble is they're trying to, I think, bridge that gap so that they have something with the validation that can't be hacked, because the problem that they've heard for years with lab caches had been the what's it called, the armchair logging.
Armchair. Yeah.
So people would go share their lab cache answers, and other people, miles and miles and miles away, who never got off their sofa or even visited that area, could then go and claim those lab caches just by having the answers.
Sofa instead of the part they were sitting on. But okay, yeah.
Well, and we'll give kudos to HQ where they're deserved, and we'll be critical when they need to be. And I think this is really a work in progress. And if we want to move a little bit forward into the Adventure Lab, to start of that, when I posted my adventure last weekend, one of the first finders of one of my hide was someone from Germany who could be in town, might not be. When I looked up his stat, he's got 3,881 finds. Of those, he's found 2,662 lab caches.
Wow.
And he has not attended a mega event. So, to me,
sounds legit to me.
Wrong with that.
Oh, wait, I answered wrong.
Well, they ran into this problem almost immediately, with the early version of the lab caches, because the ones that they had done for that movie that I can't remember what it was, people were using Street View to get the answers. It's not that people were sharing it; it's that you could just run around with Street View and answer the questions.
Sure. Oh yeah, and a couple of mine early on were that way. And then I realized it and subsequently changed them a little bit so that wasn't as easy. But I know that's, and if Bounce were here, I'd love to hear what he did. And I saw what he did for the Washington State. You put a lot of effort, there he is.
Yep.
You put a lot of effort, you put a lot of time in creating this. You want geocachers to experience the adventure, not just type something.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Exactly.
Kitty Catch in the chat says, also because they are location based, you may not be able to take the code home and log later. A real problem may be at a big event when the data lines are getting hammered.
That's right.
Could be.
Neil Moore says the CO can set approximate distance to log. So you can, set that, you're close or not. Being able to log over 2,000 lab caches is amazing. Now, I went and looked on my stats. Lab caches are number 2 for me, right behind traditionals. They've outnumbered mysteries.
Well, I've only done 123 lab caches.
I've done just the opposite, 132. Well, not just the opposite, but same numbers.
Same numbers, different order.
Different order. So it's odd to me that, he must have somebody who's going out and finding these and sending him the answers. That's an incredible number to get.
Well, yeah, and considering 3,800 is his total finds, 70-ish% is lab caches.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and there were a couple of other individuals that have similar statistics. They have more finds, but they also have around the same number of lab caches. So for me, I want people to experience Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so that's why I put my tour there. And so I want people to come. I want people to see it. If you log it from Australia, that defeats why I did it.
Right. Neil Moore in the chat says, mine had 100 finds after 30 minutes of going live. 99 of those were European finders.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, that does. Okay.
So that's the new adventure labs that they're finding?
No.
Correct. Oh, yes, they are.
Oh, the new adventure lab.
Because it's before the 25th.
Oh, because they don't have the proximity.
So they're still getting access on the web
on the web.
Right.
The web still gives you access after the 25th. That's going to go away. It's being retired. And so then you can only use the app, and the app has the proximity sensor in it, which you can either set very tight. I was talking to someone at one of the last events. It was like 30 feet. Oh, the Yuma Mega. You had to be within 30 feet of the coordinates in order to log that adventure.
That can be tough given the inaccuracy of some cell phones.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, okay, I want to let you guys know I'm flexible. I'm not rigid thinking like this. After hearing all this, okay, I tend to agree. Let's go with the app that's going to lock people into actually having to be there. There. See, I've grown as a person today.
Yeah. No, I totally understand the reason why. I just like to see something that provides an offline mode specifically for those difficult to reach locations where you may not have service. and for the locations where service is difficult for whatever reason. So, you've got to have something, I think, ultimately, but this is essentially an early beta app. This is not anywhere close to the final. And there's a lot of stuff that I think is needed that we don't currently have.
Right. Well, and it's only going to get better, as Tim was saying, Merlin was saying, as time goes on, it's going to get better. We've seen the improvements that geocaching.com has made in the last several years with the app and with other things. And, so I have confidence in them.
Well, Bounce, do we actually have you back?
Yes.
I'm not catching the audio, unfortunately.
I hear it.
Okay, that's going to be a problem with Google Hangouts again. And unfortunately, we can't get that corrected now, so I don't think we're going to be able to hear you, Bounce. Oh, lovely.
I'll translate everything he says, and I'll get it mostly accurate.
All right.
Daryl, he says he doesn't like you.
Oh.
I don't like you either. Oh, wait, that was...
we knew that.
No, that was... Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was Star Wars.
Supposed to publish that.
You just watch yourself. We're wanted men.
So it sounds like GMX times 2 said that he can hear me.
This is why I'm not going to be back next week.
Well, the good news is, Bounce Mounts, everybody can hear you except Daryl. So the question is what's going to be the audio feed?
Well, yeah, if I can't hear him, then the audio feed can't hear him either.
Oh, you'll have to grab the audio from YouTube.
Okay. Oh. So, okay, I apologize, everyone, that the audio is going to be lower quality this time because we had to use the audio from YouTube, which is nowhere near as clean.
No, but it's there, and
yes.
All the participants. So I'll go ahead and talk with Bounce, if you don't mind, Daryl.
Why don't you go ahead? Because I'm not going to be able to hear him anyway.
So Bounce, we were talking about, I guess what we're calling them is the traditional lab caches. Now we're moving into, and yours were mentioned. You had some terrific ones at GeoCoin Fest. And again, those were game type, for the most part, were game type caches that you had to solve the game in order to get the code.
Yes.
The last one, the big Simon, where you needed 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that 4-person Simon says was fun.
Yeah. So take the, for those of you who didn't make it, picture the game Simon where you have the 4 colored discs. Take those 4 colored discs apart, put them on like 8 feet of PVC tubing away from each other so you can't stretch no matter what you do. Could somebody do it with a hand and a foot? Did I see that?
I did it with my son with 2 of us, and we just kind of ran from 2 of the buttons. It was actually kind of fun, but tiring.
So once you got through, was it like 10 rounds?
We set that one for, I think it was 10 there.
Okay. Then you got a code, you punch that in, and off you go.
Yeah.
But that was a good one. I mean, yeah, it required cooperation. So have you worked on any of the new adventure labs?
I haven't worked on any of the new adventure labs. I did some beta testing for the app earlier this year or late last year. But that's all I've done with it. I haven't had a chance to even find any. I don't think anybody's published any. Now, I guess I haven't had a chance to work with the new app on creating them, but I have created some adventure lab caches for the WSGA.
Okay, right. And those are going to be long-term actual caches sitting out and about.
Yes, I'm not sure how long. I think up to a year is what they said, but I'm sure it could be extended too.
Mm-hmm. Do those have the typical distance parameters and, all the other underpinnings of a regular cache?
Not currently that I know of. And that's what I like about lab caches, because you don't have those. You can put them within whatever distance you want of each other, right? They don't have those requirements of the 528 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is you don't have to have a logbook. for them. So I like the fact that you just have to get a number to log.
Mm-hmm. So that can be on a display in some of your more coveted puzzle boxes.
Yeah. In fact, the hand scan one here you see behind me is one that sat on the other side of a window at a movie theater inside the box office. And so it was on the inside, and you just had to hold your hand up to the window, and it scanned your hand and gave you a code. So that was fun.
How cool is that?
Yeah. Now, when I went through the development part of my adventure, though, if you're going to place a physical box, then the location has to be reviewed by a reviewer to make sure that it meets the guidelines. And I don't know if the 528 would come back in from another cache, or I got the impression that in the new adventure, if you're going to physically place something, it does have to be the 528 away.
Oh, okay. I know that they were talking about that when I was down at HQ about a month ago. I mentioned that I like the fact that it's not like that, and they said, well, that might not be the case with the new adventure lab, but they weren't sure.
Yeah, and I didn't go the cache box route. Mine's virtual, so I didn't have to worry about the 528. So,
okay.
And I know, yeah, my good friend is Neil Moore, and he put one in the next city over, and his was the same way. It's kind of it's a virtual tour of some of the historic places in Muskegon, and another really well done adventure, but it's a virtual adventure rather than find something or play something.
So do they have the same, before we could put them in businesses, do they have an issue with that on the new adventure lab?
I didn't see any guidelines to that, but I went into the builder side of it, and the information that I got was kind of light in terms of the things we could and couldn't do with it. I think, HQ still kind of frowns on commercialism in the seats, so you may have some trouble with that. But I think there's a lot of development that needs to go on the adventure labs. And, one of the questions was that when I published our MyGo Challenge of the Month, somebody asked the question, would lab caches count as part of this month's adventure challenge? And I said, well, yeah, they count. And then I got back from a lot of people that said, well, how do we find them? How do we know where they are? What's the GC code for them? And while they really don't have a GC code, you just have to bring them up in the application. If you launch the Adventure Lab app on your phone, it shows you all of the public-facing adventures, I think, around the globe. And it tells you how far away you are from them. And again, you have to get within the zone, but I have 3 right here within like a couple hundred miles of me. And so that's kind of fun. And so I had to point people, okay, go load the app and then bring this up. So 2 things that I think HQ needs to work on right away. One of them is navigation, because you see the caches, the lab caches that are part of your adventure, but it doesn't show you how to navigate to them. So you have to bring the map up, and if you're driving and watching, you can't get a turn-by-turn in it. So that needs to get fixed. And then if you enter the answer wrong, on my iPhone, I got a spinny wheel. And I waited and waited and waited and waited, finally quit the application, relaunched the application, relaunched my tour, and could try to enter it again. One of the caches for Neil, we had a discussion over how many windows. I had a different number than he did, and I couldn't get to his number without guessing it. And so it took me like 12 tries, and that was very frustrating in the app. So I sent those notes off to HQ, and hopefully they'll take a look at those. But yeah, I mean, it's a work in progress.
Well, yeah, I wonder if that's what we were beta testing this last year, was the navigation. I assumed it was on there because that's what we were testing. But yeah, I just logged on to the one here, and yeah, I can't navigate to it. So
right, that's what I'm looking at here too. I can see them on a map, but I get a compass pointing there, but not navigation.
Yeah.
The point about the not finding them on the web has been an issue with the lab caches, the older ones too. If you go to a lab cache that's no longer available, you don't have the page to validate it. To show that you had done that one.
Right.
I'm wondering if this guy with 2,600 finds has found a way around that.
Well, he probably did every lab cache that was available as it was available, kind of thing.
Keepers of the Cash Flow asks an interesting question. How were people chosen to make these adventure labs?
I got an invitation in just before Christmas from HQ that said, being part of a geocaching organization, we were being one of the first groups invited. And so I know from previous shows, the geocaching organizations around the country and actually around the world have gotten together, and probably 60% of our group were invited to participate in the first round. And then we had to reply back to the email we got from HQ saying, yes, we wanted to participate. Yes, we would follow the rules and do that. I learned that our invitation had been accepted at the end of January. And at that point in time, we had until the end of March to develop our adventure. Now, subsequently, a week or so ago, HQ extended that deadline to April 25th. But that's how we were initially invited. And then I know in the second round, like Neil Moore and myself also got, as an individual, the email read something like, because we had hidden caches that had X number of favorite points, we were being invited in, and then they were going to slowly release X number as they built up this beta. And Neil was selected for that, and I had not yet.
Interesting. Well, I know Bounce, that's also how you're developing these. You're working with the WSGA, the Washington State Geocaching Association.
Yes. Yeah. And I also replied to the same email to be considered for one, and I have not received one yet. I know people are, but I think they're releasing 50 at a time, and a total of 250 is what I think it is. And they're not giving you a timeline, so you don't know when the selection's up or not.
Right.
So are these like the traditional lab caches? I don't want to be too confusing, but if you're selected for one, do you have multiple waypoints or multiple stops that you can get? Or is it just one location?
Well, for us, an adventure credit was placed in the MyGo geocaching account. And so as Bounce said earlier, that one credit is good to develop from 1 to 10 labs within the adventure. And so for me, it was like, okay, we have one adventure. What do I want this adventure to be? How many stops do I want it to be to accomplish the goal that I structured for my adventure?
Mm-hmm.
And then you build them from that.
It sounds in the chat like individuals only got 5. Tom and Kitty Catch are saying up to 5 waypoints is what they were given.
With the geocaching associations given 10. So that's interesting.
So. Maybe, yeah. I have not talked to Neil about that, whether he had 5 or 10. I know he's in the chat room. I don't have the chat up. Maybe Neil will let us know how many he got.
Sure. And maybe it's a matter of first wave or second wave too. Neil says he did get 5.
Okay.
So yeah, it probably is the individuals only got 5, but the associations got 10.
Or up to 10.
Up to 10, right? Yes. Yeah, and the difference being that all of these have to be in the one group. You can't take and split them up either.
Correct. Yeah, it's the one adventure that can have up to X number of things. Yeah.
Yeah. If the physical container has to be within 528 feet of the adventure lab, that's going to create an issue for all the ones I've made, because they're on some of my properties close within that distance of my caches. So I guess that's something I need to check into. It'd be nice if the information was given out.
Interesting.
In the past, it's never been an issue, which was nice, because you can go down one of the main streets of the town and have one in every other store, and just go up and down the street and do the lab caches. So that's, I guess, good to know.
Well, yeah, and I'm just going off of what their guidelines said, and I submitted all the sites that I wanted for review. But I also said at the same time, I don't know what we're going to review because I'm not placing a physical cache. So I don't know. I haven't heard back. I didn't hear anything back from the reviewer as I made it go live. So yeah, another piece of development. I guess you'll know if you get accepted for that next round or one of the next rounds of adventures.
Yeah.
Interesting. Alrighty.
So the takeaway.
You can hear us all, Daryl?
I can hear all of you, and you apparently can hear me now.
Hello, Daryl.
Welcome back.
I guess the takeaway at this point is lab caches are going away, and adventure labs are the way that everything is going too, but it's still very much a work in progress. And what was true today probably will not be true next week. And we just have to kind of feel out what's going on. And I would say probably what we should do as the users of these adventure labs and as geocachers is hit the feedback button on the app itself. Let them know what some of these problems are that really are frustrating to you. I'd like to have some kind of map so that I can find the clusters in areas to which I'm traveling in the future. So I'm probably going to go and drop that in there as a feedback, that I'd like to see something that shows me where the the actual group is on a map, so I can go and do that for trips.
Well, it'll show you once you select it.
Right. But I can't select by a map, so I can't go
view
to
map. Yeah.
And even if they said, okay, take me to Chicago and center me on Chicago and show me that way, it would be an improvement, because I could go and say, hey, I'm going to Chicago this weekend. What's available in that Chicagoland area?
Well, why would you go to Chicago? You've got two great adventure labs right there in the state of Michigan, not far from you.
Well, yes, I was going to go over there, but those are easy. I mean, I shouldn't say easy. They're easy for me to see because they're my closest ones.
Yeah.
Well, actually, second closest. I do have one now, not too far from me. That
I was going to say Sterling Heights is a lot closer to him, so he's got one in his backyard, Chris.
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it is, because I have one that's 290 miles to the west. Well, Chicago is west of me. This one actually turns out to be Minnesota. So I have to kind of you have to figure out where you're going, how far away from home it is, and then look to see if it's in the right general direction. I don't have any that go on non-prime coordinates. So I see southwest, east, and north.
Right.
Well, Chicago's kind of southwest. There's nothing southwest of me. Even St. Louis is south of me, not southwest of me.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I've not seen anything west of me. Everything's east.
Really?
Yeah.
I have 4 within 24 miles of me.
Yeah. Yeah, everything's east up to 5,000 miles, 10,000 miles east. Cape Town.
A bigger problem, though, would be, hey, I'm going to go do a trip to Europe and I want to hit some adventure labs in Germany. As it stands right now, I have no way to find those.
Right. I mean, you can scroll down till you get, Germany is, so many miles from me, and just, you have to go one by one. And actually, there is a map. I was going to say, you scroll down. But
yeah, the navigation is something that they need to add, but that I know is coming. So
yeah, it should be. I thought there was one in Japan, but I don't. Everything is east of me, outside of the United States. I have some over on the West Coast.
Well, I don't think that they're loading all of the adventure labs. I think it's only a certain number within range.
I got 10,000 miles away.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my last one is exploring the Cape Town waterfront. 9 locations. It's 10,227 miles away.
See, east. I have that one as well, but it's 8,300.
Huh? How come? How come you don't have the same number as me?
Well, that's where he lives.
Something's broken.
Yeah.
I'm 8428 away from that one to the east.
Same.
You said there was one in Japan?
No, I thought there was, but there apparently isn't. So, but maybe you only have to go east around the world. You can't go to the west.
Well, if you go east far enough.
That's what I mean, to the far east.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. It's funny because you can keep going north until you're suddenly going south, but you can go east and west forever.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, we were being silly. So yeah, I would love to see these on a map, even just on the website, kind of like GeoTours are. You can't log them, but at least you could get in there and plan a trip.
Agreed. And I'd like to see some kind of reference that we could have on the web to what that adventure lab was, so you can put it into a challenge cache description or something like that. And we know that they're not going to allow challenge caches based on this, at least not in the near future. But ultimately, it's something I would like to see.
Well, I don't know. Are they official caches?
Oh yeah, they count.
They count. Yeah, they count as lab caches, but you can't click through to anything last I looked. I don't actually know that I've checked the adventure labs though, because lab caches would only work while they were active, and I can't click on any of them right now. So
if they show up,
sorry, go ahead,
Chris.
No, I was gonna say if they show up as found caches, then Project GC should be able to work with them.
I didn't think Project GC worked with lab caches at all, because they can't pull it from the API.
Oh,
that was one of the things that Magnus had been talking about when we had him on in one of the shows. It's not that he doesn't want to do the lab caches;
he just doesn't have
not available, right? Yep.
Well, and there's no code. So what's the definitive mark? What's the database mark?
Well, yeah, we're not going to say that there is no code. There's no exposed code. So it could have something on the, I would assume it has one on the background.
I would think so.
It does show how many lab caches you have. Thanks, Tom. Yes, I think that it does provide the count through the API. It doesn't provide the access to the lab caches through the API.
Okay.
Well, even on the website, if you look at your profile on the caches that you found today, a lab cache will not show up on that. So it increases your counter, and the number at the top by your profile will increment, but it doesn't show you that you actually found anything today. I was looking at the forums earlier because there was a big debate about whether a lab cache is even a cache or not. And they were going back and forth. And if you go to labs.geocaching.com/logs, you can there see all the labs that you have logged.
Oh, interesting.
You can't do anything with it. And again, the question will be, if they're changing the website, will that go away after the 25th? I don't know, but I was able to see all the lab caches that I've logged, all 85 of them now, before I got on the show. So there is a way to at least see them. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting, because I can't click through those old ones on my profile. So I assume that we're just gone, but I'll have to play with that. All right, gentlemen, it's getting kind of late, so we should probably wrap it up. Does anyone have any like last minute thoughts or encouragement maybe to those who are trying to get out and find some?
Do it.
As we have crickets.
No, I think it's fun. I enjoy making them because you don't have to stand, you don't have to use a standard type of rules on distance, which I didn't think you did, but you can make them very creative, and we should stick them in places that you can't put a regular cache, you can't put it out in a park or somewhere where someone will muggle it. So I usually make them so that they're a little more entertaining to find. But I think they're fun to go find. It's it's just a different type of cache.
Kitty Catch says the cachers who are trying to hide them will need the encouragement too. Yes, we appreciate the cachers who are giving it a shot, helping to beta test this, get more out there, and giving us more to find. So thank you for your hard work. And thank you especially to the both of you for being on the show, sharing all of this info, and for placing those caches. The Adventure Labs. Sorry, they're not caches at all anymore.
No, Adventure Labs, and they're fun. They were fun to develop. I had a good time. I wish I would have personally had more time to do a little bit more creative with some video work, but I didn't have time from the time I got announced of the cache to the 31st when I thought I had to get it done. So my next one, if I get one, I've already talked to Bounce. Maybe he'll sell me a couple of his caches, but we'll see. That was brought up on another show, and I was ready to write a check. But...
Oh yeah, well then send me a message.
See, Bounce, this is a whole online business that you're just walking away from here.
I've had a lot of emails about it, so I actually talked to Scott or Goblin Dust today about that, and same thing. And it may happen. We'll see.
I can see you'll have a warehouse soon with an assembly line of caches rolling off of them to be sent out in the mail daily.
They make great, well, in the past, lab caches if you didn't have a distance issue. But they're great caches because any of those puzzle boxes you can change the code and make it a lab cache code.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right. No, they're fun to build. They're fun to find. The ones out here on our side of the state really are historical or adventures. I've placed it at the zoo, the Children's Museum, the Public Museum. So, you don't have to go inside those in order to get the adventure done. But while you're there, it's like, okay, wow, I didn't know this existed. And so maybe I'll go into the zoo and check it out. Maybe I'll go into the Children's Museum and have some fun. So trying to bring you places that you might not or normally go to.
That sounds like a hobby that I do. It's called geocaching. Oh, wait, we are doing the same thing.
I have to try that someday.
You should. Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Daryl.
Yes.
Just I had to go since I could go look at my logs. The lab cache that we were all given was in February 2014. That was over 5 years ago.
Okay, that makes sense because it was right around Valentine's Day for the I Heart Geocaching thing. But yeah, I was trying to get to that myself and couldn't get to it. But yeah, that's at labs.com/ or labs geocaching, whatever.
Labs.geocaching.com/logs.
Yeah. Well, doesn't it seem like it's like 10 years ago, not just 5 though?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't, it was the first one I did. And then I've done some since then. So, Geo Woodstock 12 at St. Louis was the next ones. But
that's right. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks again, gentlemen, for being on the show. We really appreciate you having or taking the time to join us. And for anyone who is watching or listening later, we will have links to their profiles on the show notes. So just click through to those. Now, next week, I'm off, but Chris and Xpunk X are going to be back to talk about caching with kids. Then the following week, it's yet another randomized show as we catch up with several news items and some more feedback.
That's right. But you don't have to wait till next week. You can go check the Cacheamaniacs website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners. So leave us feedback by emailing GeoGearHeads at cacheamaniacs.com or through the many channels of social media. Your support helps keep the Cashomaniac shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cashomaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2019 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with a Cashomaniac.